Hey, everybody. I'm Sarah Ford,
And I'm Mandy Powers Norrell.
and we have no name, but
Welcome to our unnamed talk.
we're going to just talk. So we are going to push back, as I love to say. We're going to put that on y'all. So if you have any great name for us to call this, what we're doing, we would love to hear it because I jokingly said we're both wearing black blazers, so we could be the black blazered bitches, is what I said. Um, but I think not. So if y'all have any thoughts, we would love to hear it from y'all. So thanks for coming over to YouTube. Hopefully we're live and y'all can hear us and see us. And I see some comments, so that's good.
I think we had some questions come in before we got started, so we can, since we're on like a little 20-second delay, we can go ahead and get started with those questions. Should we do an intro first, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, this is what our like third week of doing this. I mean, we're super professionals at YouTube. I know I didn't say the YouTube that time too, so we're getting there. Mandy, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Thank you. Well, hey, y'all, I'm Mandy Powers Norrell. I am an attorney practicing law in South Carolina. I've been practicing for almost 25 years now, mostly on the civil side, doing things like personal injury and bankruptcy and municipal law. I've recently taken a contract position with our local solicitor's office prosecuting domestic violence cases. And in my other life, I was a South Carolina Democratic politician. I served in the South Carolina House of Representatives for 4 terms and ran for lieutenant governor in 2018.
Yeah, and hint of trivia, Mandy and I have never met in person.
No.
Isn't that wild? We know a lot of the same people.
Yeah.
And know of each, but have never met. So we're like, what do you call it? Internet friends? Not
I
in
guess so. Except we have like the ability to see each other because we're pretty close.
Well, that's true. We're not that far. I'm Sarah Ford. I am the legal director at the South Carolina Victim Assistance Network, where I lead a team of lawyers and advocates as we fight for rights for crime victims all across the state. So whether it's a victim needing a restraining order or an order of protection, or if it's filing appeals for crime victims, we do what we can to plow new ground for victims and make sure that their rights are protected and enforced. I started my career as a public defender in the First Judicial Circuit, and I spent the next almost 8 years as a prosecutor. And being an assistant solicitor is the most amazing job. Absolutely love prosecuting. That's what I love that Mandy's doing that now. But mostly focused on crimes against women and children, and tried a number of different types of cases, whether it's criminal sexual conduct, murder, all of the above. And so Mandy and I started following each other, I guess, a while ago, and we started chatting. We noticed that we were posting the same things about the Murdaugh trial, and we were just kind of going back and forth. And I think I basically asked you out in DMs, as like the kids say. It's like, should we just do we should just talk to people and just, maybe we'll have a couple people that'll show up and we can answer questions and chat. And so that's how we started.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
I was like, how do we do that? And Sarah figured it out.
Well, I started to figure it out, and then it turns out that we have a lovely, wonderful moderator.
Yes.
Zeke is on here as our moderator tonight because making this happen was not gonna happen if it was just gonna be me. So
well,
thank you, Zeke,
you figured out Twitter Spaces. I didn't even know that was real.
Well, I just hit a button on that one. So so let's kind of start from the beginning.
Yes.
Are we where you thought we would be watching this trial today? Like, looking back.
I had no notions of it. I thought it would be a very long trial. I worried that we would have juror fatigue and some jurors would drop out. And we have seen that through, COVID and an ER situation, but I had no idea what to expect. So I just think I didn't. Did you expect anything specific?
it was so interesting because I was talking with someone today, and I asked them, I said, what is the one thing that stands out to you with this trial? The thing that really you're like, wow. I said, well, I guess it would have to be the bomb threat. And they're like, that was really surprising. And I was like, but was it? It felt so on brand for this entire thing, for this entire trial. It was like, well, of course there's going to be a bomb threat. Like, it just makes sense. Um, but no, it's been like a roller coaster, and that's just the nature of trials, especially when you're looking at 200 plus potential witnesses, hundreds of pieces of evidence. I mean, putting in 50 pieces of evidence is a lot. In a lot of trials. So the sheer number of witnesses and pieces of evidence and schedules that the state is having to contend with to get everybody on board is a lot. And I think overall, I've been very impressed with what they've done there. So I don't know if we're exactly where I thought we would be. I think we all thought that maybe we'd be done by now, but we were just young and innocent 4 weeks ago.
I went to law school during the OJ trial, and that was 11 months. And so I thought, this is kind of like the OJ trial. So I thought it might take a really long time.
The Southern OJ trial, right? It's like, okay, it's true. Carolina. So I want to ask you a question because we keep seeing this question, and I'm really interested because FYI, both Mandy and I are full-time lawyers, among other things that we do. So while we would both love to watch the trial, it doesn't happen. So we have to catch up on it.
And when it does, it means I've neglected a lot of work.
Well, and I'm like, okay, well, it's 3 a.m. and I'm reading all the things I need to. But you did a really great breakdown on Twitter this week about the timeline, because Friday was a really great day for the prosecution. Why don't you talk about that for a little bit?
The timeline, to me, I was thrilled because I felt like things were disjointed, and I thought I was following it because it, up until the last several days when it was disjointed, because I have the benefit of looking things up when I go home. The jury does not have that benefit. And so I thought, Creighton needs to close his case in chief with the timeline, and he did that. I'm so glad that he did. And that timeline included the OnStar data that synced up with the infotainment system data and fit with the cell phone locations. And it showed that the technology is not only there, but it's also reliable. And so I was thrilled to see that. There were a few things in that timeline that I thought were especially damning. And the main one was the 17 or 19 seconds. So the infotainment system says that he put the car in park and had 17 seconds before, or had 19 seconds before he called 911. The point of the OnStar gives him 17 seconds before he called 911, but that point registered 2 seconds after he put the car in park. Right. So he has 19 seconds to call 911. And in that time, he has to do all of the things that he later said in interviews that he did, which is he just kept adding things that he did. He went to there, but he assessed. First, he got out of the car. He assessed. He tried to turn Paul over, then got his cell phone, looked at it, and tried to do something thinking maybe, and I'm using Alex's words here, and then thought no, and put it down on his behind. Right. He went to Maggie. He assessed her. He later says he tried to turn her over. And then he gets back to his car to call 911, and that dialing and sending, that's a few seconds too. So it is, I think that was some real damning evidence right there. And there were so many other things that showed kind of how he went about his day that give you a sense of who he is and what he's thinking and that kind of thing. But is that when
Creighton? I'm sorry to interrupt, but was that when Creighton? I loved it when I was like, yes. He was like, oh, he was really busy then, right?
That was earlier.
That was earlier. Okay.
before.
I love a little interjection.
Right after they say the murders happened, and then his step count picked up.
Step count went up.
And it was just like moving. And we already had that evidence, but they had not put it together in a really cohesive timeline. Then when they put it together in a cohesive timeline and added the OnStar data with him speeding up and racing down those country roads at 80 miles an hour, it was very, very compelling because everything fit together with a narrative that the state is trying to convey. So that was, I thought, especially interesting. And I think it overcame reasonable doubt. I mean, we haven't seen what the defense puts up yet, but you cannot argue with the durable data of technology.
Yes.
Maybe they can. Maybe they'll have an expert who can argue with it, but it's going to be hard.
Well, I mean, obviously they're going to come up with, they're not going to just sit there and be like, oh, we don't have any questions, because Lord knows they're going to have a lot of questions.
When the state got finished, I thought, if I'm for the defense, I might be looking around like, oh my gosh, what do I do now?
Well, it was, I felt like after Friday, it was finally that like slow clap, like, all right, like we've been building up to this, and it's like stop, like let's up down, but then it was like it's all coming together, and it was really great to see that.
Watching that, like it was the crescendo of an action movie or something.
It was, and we're like, oh my gosh, and we've talked before about when the state, when they're presenting their evidence, if we've got the baseline here, the state, when their stock is rising, the defense's stock is falling. And so we kind of talked about that. It's kind of been a little, not as high as we think it should be, but Friday I was like, damn, that's where they needed to be for when they rested, so that this week there's a lot of ground, in my opinion, for the defense to have to make up. And are they going to be able to do that?
I agree. And Dick and Jim are brilliant lawyers.
They're good lawyers. Yeah.
They may pull a rabbit out of a hat here, because there are still some things that I would say, what about? So that's if they can answer questions like, what happened to the money? And make that fit their narrative, because I know they only really have to do reasonable doubt, but that jury wants them to.
They want the answers. So somebody asked that question, where's the money?
Tell me.
I have no idea, but if y'all have a better idea, please let us know, because I mean, that's the $1 million question, or the $10 million question.
But I think Dick and Jim, if they make an effort at explaining that, then I think they're going to gain some points with the jury.
I think, we've talked about this before, and when we just got off of Surviving the Survivor podcast at 6, we talked about likability, and how much that really goes into what the jury is going to think. Do you think that, this is going to be the week where the defense is on, this is their week to really, put it all out there, their witnesses, experts, whoever. Do you think their, mojo is going to change? Do you think they're going to flip script and be super,
likable? But I mean, I served with Dick Harpootlian. I've known him for years. He is who he is.
Yeah.
He's unapologetically who he is.
I love unapologetic.
I would love to have like a few drops of his personality in mine, because I'm a people pleaser. He is not. He is the opposite. And so he's like baking extract, he's like the whole bottle when you need a few drops in everybody. But yeah, he's the whole thing. But I don't think he will suddenly become, Mr. Nice. I think that he's already told the jury, hey, I'm going to
forgive me for being
who I am. Don't hold it against Alex. Just, it's who I am. And so I don't think they're going to switch up and suddenly try to be likable. I mean, do you? I think Alex thinks, he believes he's likable and charming, and he is charming. And I think he'd love to show the jury how charming he is. What do you think?
Oh gosh. I think maybe there will be a better dance between Dick and Jim and their witnesses. because they're looking at it that these are our witnesses and they're going to get out there. And so maybe there won't be that air of condescension that we've seen with some of the state's witnesses. But I agree. I don't think that they're going to just, flip script here, because they, part of why they're defending Alec Murdaugh is because of the successes that they've had in the past. Love them, hate them, think they're the best lawyers ever or the worst lawyers ever. They've been very successful.
Right. And there is
what they've done for years.
Lawyer that is drawn to an area of practice where you're going to lose most of the time. I mean, when you're a criminal defense lawyer, you're going to lose a lot more than you win. And you have to have that personality type that's like, I'm just going to do it.
Got it. This is it.
But people who really care about winning don't become criminal defense lawyers, if that's a thing to them. So they measure their wins in other ways. And so, Sarah, we've had some questions about the grand jury and the difference between the grand jury and the petty jury. And since you were a prosecutor, I think you would be like a really good person to answer that. And then the accusation that the lead investigator lied to the grand jury. And I think that needs some explanation, because I don't think that he did.
I don't think he did either. But let's back up. So the grand jury, oftentimes we'll hear people say, oh, well, he was indicted. But we don't, so it's like, what does that really mean? So the grand jury is a group of 18 people that meet in each county in South Carolina. Sometimes it's once a month, sometimes it's every other month. But those 18 people will hear from either an officer or a solicitor, and they will go in on a case and present whatever evidence they have. But they're not presenting evidence like, here's the box of evidence, and I'm going to go through every piece that I've got here. They're going to give the broad strokes, because for the grand jury, the standard is, do we think a crime occurred? And what's the likelihood that this is the person that committed the crime? And so that standard, if we're looking at the scales of justice, of course, I'm a law dork. I have the scales of justice in my dining room. It makes a really great centerpiece. But if we're looking at the scales of justice, you're tipping them ever so slightly for someone to be indicted. And so only 12 out of those 18 people have to vote yes, we think that a crime occurred, and we think that this is the person that did it. And once at least 12 out of those 18 people vote yes, we call that a true billed indictment, meaning that person has been indicted. But if less than those 12 people, they say you've got 10 people that vote, and 10 people say, nope, I don't believe that a crime occurred, or we think this is the wrong person, and 8 people say yes, that bill is no billed. That indictment is no billed, so they're not indicted. And the key to all this is that every person that goes to trial in the state of South Carolina and elsewhere has to be indicted. You cannot waive presentment to the grand jury like you can if you're pleading guilty, for instance. So, when I think it was Special Agent Owen who was testifying, and there was a question of evidence, and he testified to the grand jury about what he thought at the time was the correct report, whatever he thought it was. And then it came back that it was not. I think it was about the blood spatter, or that the blood, it was actually not blood. And he was raked over the coals by Jim Griffin about that. And the thing is, at that time, he wouldn't have known. He would have not known that until months later, long after he was already indicted. So it definitely, in my opinion, was not a outright lie to the grand jury. It was the information he had at the time. And when you look at the entirety of the evidence that they were presenting, it really wouldn't have made any difference, in my opinion. So that's a short, welcome to my TED Talk on grand juries. But I don't think it was intentional. I don't think it was something that was like, we're going to lie to the grand jury because we need this. They didn't need it. So there was no incentive for that. But
I do think Jim Griffin scored some points with that.
He did, yeah.
And two, David Owen was not, I think he was in, not the greatest place emotionally, because his mother had died
just passed away. Yeah.
And so I think that they just kept pushing him, and he and his responses were probably not what they would be had he been fresh and not having just gone through
exactly
the sudden grief that he did. So we have one that's, what implications do you think this trial will have on the future regarding SLED, the Attorney General, and the legal system in South Carolina? What do you think? I don't know that we don't go back to business as usual, but SLED may investigate more thoroughly.
Well, it's always good, as my daddy says, sometimes you need a good checkup from the neck up. And for the Attorney General's office, they received this case as it was. They weren't involved. I know that some states, the prosecutors will go out to the scene and they're involved in the investigation.
But
I'm
yeah,
so
which again here, but it wasn't the AG's office.
It wasn't well, that is another podcast that we will do, another talk we'll have perhaps. But they received this case as it was with the evidence, and some of it was really good and some of it was less than thrilling. So I think that for them, I look at it a little bit differently. I think with SLED, it appeared that some of their special agents appeared to be intimidated by Alec Murdaugh and PMPED lawyers being there, all these people at the scene. I don't know that would have happened in 99% of the cases that they may that they may investigate. And I think it's important that sometimes you get your licks, take them and learn from them. That's the most important thing.
And in that case, the people at the scene had confidence. Like they were like, well, I'm going to send Blanca in the house to clean up, and I'm just going to do it because I can do it. The rest of us would be like, excuse me, SLED, do you mind if I send someone to
clean up? Can I go to the bathroom? Right.
SLED would say, no, you can't do that. But if you just do it, they had that confidence that comes with being the top lawyers in a small town. And so I think that had a lot to do with it too. It's sort of them just kind of pushing.
Yeah. And I think it works against what Dick and Jim have been trying to put in the minds of the jury, that they went after Alec from day one. It's like, are you kidding me? That would never happen in pretty much any other scene, any other incident where you've got people traipsing in and out, being escorted through basically a crime scene.
Yeah.
By friends and lawyers and family. Absolutely not. So I think that SLED more than gave Alec the benefit of the doubt, and I think that's been shown. And I think that's a good, nope, not that one, guys, not that one.
Exactly. I think they gave deference, but I also don't think, a lot of people have implied, oh, it's the good old boy system. They were trying to throw it for him. They were trying to screw up the scene to help him get away with murder. If they thought that he really did commit murder, I see no indication that they were just trying to help him get away with anything. I think they were giving deference to, just the notion of, oh my gosh, if this man didn't do it, he is in grief. And let's assume that he didn't, still keep him in the circle of those investigated, but give him some space. And
I agree. I think it's, just thinking about the quote unquote good old boy system. I mean, we're both women lawyers in South Carolina, but I don't think the good old boy system is just a South Carolina thing or a Southern thing. I think that people with power, privilege, money, that's going to rule whether you're in Montana or you're in California or Massachusetts or Mississippi or Colleton County, South Carolina. So I do want to say, among other things, as I'm saying, that, I think the greater issue is how we allow people with power and privilege. We defer to those people. And I say we very generally, but just in general, and how accountability can really draw the light and shine that light and say, is this what we want? Is this what we want to show people that we're all about?
And I say it's so similar to the JonBenet crime scene. JonBenet Ramsey, when she died, her parents were powerful, wealthy people in the neighborhood. They wanted their friends with them. The law enforcement investigating the scene let their friends and family trample all over that crime scene because they were showing deference to a grieving family. So this is not like a Southern thing. This is, power and privilege rules,
pretty much
nationally.
So we've got so many questions, and we're trying. If we're not calling your name out, saying that we're answering your question, we're seeing them, and Zeke is sending us these questions. So we're just trying to keep chatting and keep trying to show y'all some of the things that we're seeing here. All right, so I've got a question here. Do you think that Alex Murdaugh is going to testify?
I have said this many times. I think he wants to. I think he wants to very much. I think that the defense has to not only deconstruct the state's narratives, but construct their own believable narrative, because the jury's going to say if he had a story, he'd tell it. And I think that the only way they really get their narrative across is to have him tell it, but it is so dangerous. His narrative, if he tells it, has to account for why he lied so many times. He's got to own those lies, and he's got to have a good story as to why he told them. He's got to, I think his narrative has to explain where all the money went, because we are not believing that he had a $50,000 a week drug habit. So I think he would like to. It may be their only shot at reasonable doubt is to have him testify. And I think Alex is confident in his charm. He's
Well, it's worked for.
He's a charming man.
Right. And just for those of you, we were joking before we went on that I just want to say this, if you heard that, it is my zero sugar ginger ale. I'm off the diet Mountain Dews now because I would like to sleep at some point tonight. So you've got a question? Go ahead.
Oh, there is one here. Well, Loco Moco wants us to share the potential defense witness list. I printed it off the internet and just I've written all over it. I don't even know where I found it now, but it's
on the Clerk of Court's website. So if you go to the Clerk of Court's website for Colleton County, I'll make sure after we get off of this, I'll link it on my
awesome.
on my Twitter.
Okay.
And then you can put that on there. We will do that for you.
Thank you so much. Would Judge Newman have had personal experience with Alec? Most likely, yes. We've talked about, you've heard so much testimony about the trial lawyers convention that many of us go to every year. I've been every year since 2008. That's the year I met Alec. And Judge Newman is often there. I think that, Alec was president of the association at one time. I think most definitely Judge Newman would have had some interaction with Alec, probably just, handshake. He may have appeared before Judge Newman, probably not, because most of his cases were in the Low Country. That's where he tried his cases. But it's hard to be a trial lawyer in South Carolina and not at least know who Alec is. Even if you have not had interactions with him. Do you agree?
I do. I think that, but I also think that Judge Newman was chosen for this particular job because he is just, his disposition is just very calm, and he's going to give it either side. And it's just, he's so well respected by the bar. He's so well respected by anybody that's ever appeared in front of him. And I think that he was chosen for a reason. And I think that people here in South Carolina and across whoever's watching, or I'm proud to say I've appeared in front of Judge Newman, because it's like he's just a really really good judge, a really fair judge, very thoughtful, and he is not a judge that gets rattled. Sometimes you'll see a judge that'll get really mad or upset or angry, and it's just written all over their face, and he'll just lean back, and it's like, okay.
And that's what I love. I'm going to point to him when people criticize how we elect judges in South Carolina, because Judge Newman was elected through the process. And while it's not a perfect process, I think it is way better than popular elections. Popular elections would not have given us Judge Newman.
We will talk about that at another time. I am completely the opposite with you on that. But that'll make for a really good discussion.
Yeah. But also Judge Newman is located in the center of the state and in
Yes, good
Columbia
point.
primarily, and Alec was in the Low Country, well over an hour away and a few jurisdictions away. So he wouldn't have appeared before him regularly.
Yeah, and we do, our judges, we call it riding the circuit, where you have resident judges, and then judges will kind of go to different circuits so that you're not appearing in front of the same judges every single week or term rather of court. So it would be rare. There are some Greenville attorneys or Greenville judges or Spartanburg judges. I'm kind of in the low country, so I know their names, but I've never appeared in front of them. They've been judges for 20 years. I've been practicing for over 15 years. So you're not always going to appear in front of everybody. And so I don't think it's conspiracy theory level of things that sometimes people want.
There's so many conspiracy theories kind of put out there about this trial, and like 90% of them have just no basis. So
we've got a couple possible names I'm seeing that Zeke is putting.
I know. I love these names that folks are giving us, and thank y'all
thank y'all so much. Lady lawyers react. Well, my face is normally like, what? Okay, all right, I like it. So Caitlin, will the jury each get a copy of the timeline when they deliberate?
It was entered into evidence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they'll get every piece of evidence.
I don't know that they're each going to get a piece. I don't know if that was your question, Caitlin.
Each of the jurors get
but they will take all of the pieces of the evidence. So, after, the state is rested, the defense will rest, the state can recall, or rather do rebuttal. And then once everyone has rested, the Judge Newman is going to charge everyone on the law. And that is the law according to the state of South Carolina, not the law according to the brain of Sarah Ford or Mandy Powers Norrell or what the jurors think.
Or any individual juror.
Exactly. And after he charges the jury and instructs them on what basically their job is, both the prosecutors and the defense attorneys will go through every piece of evidence, make sure that it is marked appropriately, logged, and then everything will be delivered to the jury room. So there may be a significant delay between, obviously after closing arguments, the charging of the jury, and then getting all of that. So they will have a lot of things to go through. Heck, it could take days. I don't want to say days because, oh my gosh, but it could take days if they're going through every single piece of evidence and looking at it.
Right. And there will be a juror who remembers something differently, and then they have to find that piece of evidence that proves that
450. Where are we at? 450 or something like that right now. So,
right. So,
all right. Okay. Okay. So that is the name of a serial killer. So hope. Okay. All right. Why would the judge appoint the jury foreman?
Because that's what we do.
It's what we do. We are not Law and Order, y'all. We are
do that. And it seemed that the jury had appointed their own foreman because they saw that on television and then thought and had been probably dealing with that assumption that they already had a foreman when the judge appointed a foreman.
Yes. Yep.
Report person.
All right, y'all, these are some great questions. And if you see, I'm looking down because I'm looking at the chat and this is great.
Can the prosecution subpoena the receivers? I don't know why they would. I think that would complicate things because the financial crimes are proven, they're admitted to, they're as clear as they need to be, I think, in this trial. Do you agree, Sarah?
I agree with that. I think that 404B evidence, we keep talking about that. And that's basically, I can't use my prior character or your prior character to say, what, it's likely that Mandy is going to do X. And she did it because she used to do that all the time. And she's just a really bad lady. Mm-hmm. So it's used to protect defendants from saying you were a bad guy, 12 years ago, you're a bad guy 3 years ago. you're a bad guy today, and that's because you did this. You can't use it to prove conformity in your past, your past character.
Mhm.
But I love this. So I want everybody to think Home Alone. Okay. The Wet Bandits. Everybody knows the Wet Bandits. What did the Wet Bandits always do? They turned on the water in the basement, right? So if you want to see, if I don't know what the law in Illinois is. I'm a South Carolina lawyer, but if that were in South Carolina, guess what? If you were a victim of the Wet Bandits, you're going to be able to bring in all of those prior acts, all of those burglaries, because there was a common scheme. They had this, they were showing, hey, we always turn on the water in these burglaries. We know that's what we do. And I loved it. The cop at the end of Home Alone, one of my favorite movies as a kid, is like, we know every house you hit now. And he's going, the Wet Bandits,
darn it.
Exactly. But that is an example. It's not a real life, but it's an example of when you would be able to admit for B evidence, because it's not showing, hey, they were bad guys all these other times, but it's showing, hey, they had a motive. This is a common scheme. This is identity. This is who they are. They're the Wet Bandits. And you got 12 houses that say, hey, they burglarized.
And that's why I thought that the roadside shooting, the staged roadside shooting should come in, because it was the same. This is what what we're saying he did is right. He staged a shooting and then tried to blame it on somebody else. Oh my gosh, a couple months later, he admits to staging a shooting and trying to blame it on somebody else to make it look like his family is being targeted. And so, but they didn't really argue that. They argued that it showed motive, but you can't show motive after the fact. But then ultimately, thank goodness it came in because of a mistake made by the defense. I was frustrated at the state's arguments going into it as to why the roadside shooting should come in. But to me, that was so essential to this case. It had everything to do with
I think it was really important. I think I'm really glad that, Jim opened the door there. And it makes me think of one of my favorite judges, Judge Diane Goodstein, is when you were getting close, she'd go, creaking, like the creaking door. And it's like, you're getting close. And it's like, and every time he was getting, I was thinking of Judge Goodstein, like, but yeah, it's, and I had seen some people where they're like, was that intentional? What's going to come of that?
They don't intentionally make mistakes.
I don't think so. I don't think anybody's intentionally saying, I really want to tank today. I really want to,
Not intentional. I mean, Dick Harpootlian plays chess when other people play checkers, but that I don't think was intentional at all. They did not want evidence of that roadside shooting coming in because it changes the weather.
Absolutely.
So Vanessa, the priestess of petty, says, what advice would you give the defense? What would you say, Sarah?
Ooh, I love this question. And also I love your name, Vanessa. So I would say, don't put Alec on the stand. At least not right now. Don't put him on the stand. I think I like defenses where you just throw a bunch of Jello on the wall and see what sticks. I've found that sometimes those really logical, defenses where like, I've got the law on my side. I feel like I've got great facts here to be able to argue this. I find in talking with juries afterwards, they like where you're like giving options about things and throwing things out there. And I think they've really got to hone in on poking holes and all of those things. I think they're really going to do that this week with their expert witnesses. I don't know exactly what they're going to testify to, but it's kind of like being lawyers. There is somebody every time I walk into a courtroom that's standing on the opposite side that is arguing the complete opposite of what I am. They're like, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And I'm going, hey, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So there's always somebody. It's an adversarial system. So I would just say, keep poking holes. It does. And I know you're going to say the opposite of that because you want a logical story, but
Tell me what happened. If he didn't do it, tell me what happened. And because I think that there's just so much damning evidence against him. And I would give them the advice to put him on the stand, mainly just because I love drama and I want to see what he says. And, that because that would entertain me. And if they're listening to my advice, I'm going to give them the advice that entertains me. So I'm going to say, put him on the stand. Give me a believable narrative that answers the one big question that the state did not answer. Where did the money go? What happened to the money? If your narrative answers that question, then I think you've got a good shot at prevailing.
What do you think? Do you think that Dick and Jim and their team are reading all of the comments from people all around?
I think they're watching us right now.
Hey guys. I mean, if I had a case that I'm in the middle of trying the case and thousands and thousands and thousands of people are watching and commenting.
In your cases, to have all of these brilliant minds just like saying, yeah, I think you missed something, though that was in camera and not in front of the jury. You need to circle back around. Mm-hmm. It's just, there are so many brilliant people helping in this trial that I would love to have in every case that I have.
Oh yes, no doubt. Okay, so we've got,
So doubt, reasonable doubt, some doubt, no doubt, and all that. Can you talk about that, Sarah?
Sure. So again, I wish I had okay, so we're looking at the scales of justice. So if we're in the grand jury, so we're just tipping them ever so slightly to indict somebody, okay? If we are looking at scales of justice for beyond a reasonable doubt, it's like this, okay? That's what the scales of justice are doing. So people often think, well, it's beyond a doubt or beyond. The key word is a reasonable doubt, okay? That doesn't mean that there's no doubt. It means that after looking at all of the evidence, hearing the law, that the jurors are firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt. And one thing that I absolutely have stolen many times from Deputy Solicitor in the First Circuit, he would always say, it is not your job as a juror to go looking for doubt. That's not your job. Mm-hmm. Your job is to hear this evidence. Your job is to listen to the law, and you've got to apply the law to the facts that you've been given. That's it. And so often, I mean, of course, what are we doing right now? We're looking for, we're scrounging for it. But, right? We're looking for that explanation, that doubt. That's not what the jury is allowed to do. So it's not beyond every ounce of doubt, but is it reasonable? Is it reasonable to think that Alec could have gotten out of his car, gone over to Paul, gone over to Maggie, come back to I in 17
seconds?
I
don't think so. And I think that's going to be a hard one to overcome.
That just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, there's no way. He knew that they were already dead. And the reason he knew that is because he did it. But has the state proven that? I don't know. We'll see. And what is the defense going to say? I mean, it's very exciting to see this happen and being able to, I mean, of course, everybody can go and watch a trial, in your community. Go do it. I think it's absolutely fascinating, not just because I'm a lawyer, but being able to see what's actually happening inside the courtroom for really weeks on end is really fascinating. And I think that's why so many of us lawyers are interested, because it helps make us better lawyers, because we're watching it and we're seeing it.
I know, and that's what I tell myself when I'm not getting my work done. And I'm watching, I'm like, this is making me a better lawyer. And I'm going to be better because I spent all this time, not getting anything done and listening to this trial. Why wasn't the jury able to take notes? Because they didn't ask for notepads, I think, right?
It's not something that South Carolina juries cannot. I've seen that so many times. Well, they just aren't allowed. And it's like, no, they are allowed. It's really up to the courts and the discretion of the court. I know that personally, I'm not a huge fan of jurors taking notes, because if they're writing something down, they're not listening to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And they're going to, you have to remember,
the juror with the notes becomes the bully,
But like, let me go back to pay,
so you can't disagree with me. So
and it's like
to it too.
I think that it can be dangerous either way.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion and in my experience, I'd rather take the no note taking. I'm cool with that, much more so than having 12 people whose heads are down the entire time, not looking at the witness, not seeing what sort of demeanor they have. How are they answering the questions? Because so much communication is that nonverbal communication, and that's important in a trial. So you don't want a jury miss that.
Exactly. We've got lots of questions about life insurance.
Ooh, what do you think about the life insurance?
I never
Yay, nay?
I never thought he had $10 million of life insurance. Just if he had $10 million of life insurance, would he not just stop paying the premiums on that to try to catch up his mortgage? I do bankruptcy. People are making decisions about where their money goes, and they're choosing the most important thing to them. Life insurance payments are not going to be the most important. Now, he could have had it through the law firm, but Mark 10, which would create a sense of urgency right after he's fired to go ahead and use it. I don't think he wanted to kill himself. Mark Tinsley testified. He went and had his insurance card with him. He went and called Blanca that day and said,
Blanca, what's my insurance? Where's my
you don't need insurance more.
If
you're really intending to commit suicide, you don't need your health insurance card. So there's that. And Mark Tinsley testified that when he received insurance policies, he received no life insurance policies for any of them. But of course, that would not have been helpful in his case. So, in assessing what insurance funds were available to the boat crash victims. So I don't know that he necessarily would have received life insurance policies if they had no present cash value. But I did believe when he testified to that there never was life insurance, and that perhaps he was charged with conspiracy to commit insurance fraud because he confessed to conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. And they're not supposed to charge you based on your confession, but we've seen.
I sent you that statute the other night at like 10:30. I was like, I gotta look it up. I gotta see.
Yeah, he didn't have to have insurance in order.
Could you have to? Insurance fraud. All right. Okay, so y'all, there's so many questions here. First of all, appreciate y'all being on here with us. We're lawyers, we are not YouTubers. But I think we're trying tonight. So we appreciate y'all being here. Please make sure, I feel like Joel on STS was like, make sure you tell them to like your page and to subscribe. So please do that. Yeah. while you're here.
Like our page. And please follow us on Twitter.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, right? Zeke, will you
ESQ?
ESQ, yes. Zeke, hopefully Zeke will put our what do we even call that?
Our Twitter handles.
Our handles. Will you put our handles? Zeke, you're the best producer ever. Thank you so much for helping us with this. So we've got a few more minutes. One thing I wanted us to talk about too, that I've got so many thoughts on this. Collateral victims. So the direct victims in this case are obviously Paul and Maggie Murdaugh. Under South Carolina law, victims can also be immediate family members, can be a surviving spouse, as long as they are not charged with the murder of that person.
Right.
So Buster is by the Constitution and statute, he is a victim. But the number of victims that we've seen, I feel like it just keeps growing pretty much every day. What are you thinking about that?
I'm thinking about the cell phone extraction and people who were, texting a bikini picture. These people didn't want to be dragged into this. Right. And now they look bad, and it's just another set of victims of Alex Murdaugh. Even if you don't think he killed his family, he's admitted to stealing from his clients. He's put himself in the situation of being tried as a defendant to 2 murder charges, and his path of of destruction to his family and friends is just, it's tremendous. And I mean, that's not as big a thing as what, you know, Buster is suffering, which is horrendous and really horrible. And he's also being like chased by reporters like they're paparazzi outside the courthouse. I mean, nobody deserves that. And so there are just a lot of collateral victims here. But in addition to being a victim of Alec, there's also like people opining openly that these victims were somehow perpetrators or that they deserved their victimhood. And that really drives me nuts.
It's so difficult because there are so many, there are direct victims. There are, those survivors of homicide victims by statute. And somebody asked a question, does South Carolina have Marsy's Law? Actually, no, we were one of the first states in the country. We passed a constitutional amendment back in 1998 with victims' rights laws. And South Carolina is actually a leader in victims' rights laws. So Article 1, Section 24 for my fellow constitutional nerds, where you can learn about victims' rights. But I think what was I saying? See, this is real life, y'all. I was like, I was looking down. I was like, oh, go Zeke. Thank you.
We're talking about the direct and the collateral victim.
Thank you. So, with that, we see, I think of Miss Shelley. I see her, I see, family and friends, people that their lives have been really turned upside down because of what happened. And are they victims under the letter of the law? Maybe not. But I just see this has far-reaching consequences for so many people. Some people that you wouldn't even imagine, like, you're like, what? That doesn't even make sense that all these people have been
self-appointed like Twitter person who searches people that I know are collateral victims of Alec and to see if they're being unfairly maligned on Twitter in order to set people straight. And I got into a few, arguments. And to me, like being a lifelong people pleaser, it's kind of good for me to go and, fight.
Got it, me. I got your back.
No, you are wrong. She is not what you said she is, and she is them, and she doesn't deserve this.
So I have to turn down my rowdy. I have to turn my rowdy down. So maybe a little bit of like Dick Harpootlian's whatever he's got going on. I'll give you like a piece of my rowdy because I could probably use a little bit more. I'm not a super calm person. I mean, I drink a Diet Mountain Dew at night, but okay, so we've got just a couple more minutes. Thank you so much for being here.
So much. I haven't gotten to all of them, but
thank y'all. We are definitely going to do this again, for sure. Right? I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm putting you on the spot. We're going to do this again.
Yes, we're going to do it again. Let's do it Thursday.
Let's do Thursday. So we will do it in the same format. Because right now, I think you guys are typing in questions and comments and things in the chat, which I love. So it means you guys can hear us. So that's great. So we know that we're thriving in that regard. But so we're going to do this again. And we're definitely, I feel like we're going to have so much to talk about because we'll have Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday to see what the defense comes up with.
Right.
I mean, they can cover a lot of ground by Thursday.
And I just want to say, I think people are saying, oh, they shouldn't have put the coroner up. He was a terrible witness. I think he was a fabulous witness for them because you put the elected coroner who's not a medical doctor up, and he says that he determined the time of death by feeling their armpit. And then the jury's like, we don't know the time of death. There's no way that's accurate. So I think that they put him up for the reason of making him look like a non-expert. So I think we scored a few points there, but
I think inadvertently, it wasn't the traditional, like, this is a great witness for us, but by not being a great witness, I think that it may have helped. So
is the coroner.
We'll have to see, right?
So yeah.
So we're gonna do this on Thursday again. 8:00, same time. And I hope that y'all will continue to write in. I think that we're gonna put the live up so y'all can join it, and you can ask questions ahead of time. So even if you can't log on until later, you can ask questions, and we can take a look at those. So please do that, and please help us figure out our names, because I don't want to be the black blazer bitches. I don't think that that's very professional. We can't do that.
Be like going around in town and people say,
I can't do that. But I'm certain you guys are fantastic and smart, and maybe you can help us figure out exactly who we are. So we appreciate it, and we appreciate y'all being here and spreading the word, because we've really enjoyed doing this. We hope that y'all have learned something, that we've injected a little bit of humor into a really, really difficult set of circumstances and a really difficult trial. So please make sure that y'all are taking care of you while you're watching this, because this is heavy. It really is.
Beside you.
All right. Well, y'all, thanks for being here, and we will see y'all hopefully on Thursday.
See y'all Thursday.
All right, y'all.
Thank you for setting us up, Sarah. And thank you, Zeke, producer.
Yay. Thank you, Zeke. Okay.